Hello, Broadway babies. It's an exciting day. We are ready for the Tony nominations, which we'll announce on Monday. We have our final eligibility rulings, and I am here to help you all with some predictions. It's a tough year this year, but to help us out, I'm joined by my good friend David Buchanan, Brian Lipton of Cititour, and Michael Musto from Queerty and Village Voice. Thank you, gentlemen. This year, I remember back in the fall, it's a great year for plays. There were a lot of incredible productions, and I'm wondering how many do we think are going to be remembered from the fall? Lehman Trilogy is out front. I also am going out on a limb for Clyde's, which is ranked 6th, just out of the top 5 in our predictions. But Brian, are you taking a chance on anything with these?
Yes, I mean, I agree with you, first of all, that the first half of the season was frankly really stunning for plays, not that there weren't some good choices in the second half. I'm really hoping that although it was the first show to open, I'm hoping the nominating committee actually remembers Passover. Again, it is the first show to open, but I actually think it was the strongest actual play of that whole first half of the season. I mean, Clyde's was fun and I adore Lynn Nottage, but I just think Passover had more to say. And I also hope, although you might know more about its eligibility, I would love to see Skeleton Crew nominated. Although I'm not sure if it's a new play or a revival. That I couldn't quite get a clarification on that.
I believe Skeleton Crew is up for best play because it doesn't quite classify as a classic.
No, it doesn't. But when it first, not to interrupt, when it first opened, I had talked to somebody involved in the production, and they said that they were asking for it to be best revival. But then when I reread the eligibility notes, it wasn't listed the way other shows were. So I'm figuring maybe they changed their mind or the committee kept it as a new play. So I'd love to see those two go. Although I do want to say I don't think anything will beat Lehman Trilogy. So we can talk about 5, 6, 8 nominations. I think this is a done deal.
David, do you agree? Is anything beating Lehman Trilogy this year?
I don't think anything's beating it. I don't know if it's open and shut right now, but I do think it's out front. I'm also thinking, Brian, Skeleton Crew can get into best play. I have it predicted. Dominique Morrisseau is such an acclaimed playwright, and it's a great production. So I do think it will get in, even though it closed back in February. I'm hoping it'll be remembered, and I think it will.
Yeah. I hope so too.
Michael, what say you? Are you taking a chance on anything, or are you sticking with the sort of top 5 that are in there right now?
Well, first, let me make a disclaimer, which is that even though I'm quadruple vaccinated, my arm is like cheesecloth. I can't wear a tight mask for any length of time, so I had to miss a lot of this season. It's been mask mandated. That being said, I did see some things off Broadway and some things before lockdown. But I think this is one season based on the buzz where they're going to remember things that have closed. They usually don't like to give Tonys to shows that close because the point of the Tony is not just to reward quality, but to reward the box office. In this case, they're going to have to swallow their pride. And from what I'm hearing, Lehman Trilogy will go all the way. And I think the other nominees will be Hangman, Skeleton Crew, The Minutes, and Clyde's.
Yes, I think we have the same lineup, Michael. So
then you're wrong. Then you're wrong because I'm always wrong.
That's not true. You do great all the time. Well, if
whether or not anybody saw it, does anybody think because of the political climate that POTUS has a chance?
It's interesting because POTUS it's a straight, it's a farce, and they don't always go for just flat out comedy in this category. It often has to be comedy that's smart in some way, or it does have a great feminist message, and it's hysterical. It's an amazing night out at the theater. But I think its better shot is in the acting race for featured actress. I think it's going to get just shut out of best play because there's more sort of important seeming plays. Which, speaking of, if we look at revival of a play, it seems like there's sort of four productions that are kind of agreed upon, which are For Colored Girls. What do we have in here? For Colored Girls, Take Me Out. Everyone seems to also have How I Learned to Drive and Trouble in Mind, but there's that final slot that's up for grabs, with everything kind of at equal standing there for number 5. I have Skin of Our Teeth because I think it's audacious. They tried a lot of bold swinging for the fences with that production, I think. But does anyone have anything different? Michael, what are you thinking?
I would have to go with American Buffalo, and I know David Mamet is one of the less popular people in the theater world right now, but I think they will show how big they are and just say that we think it's a good production. Macbeth is another chance, but that truly divides people. Half the audience is apparently running to the exit. Some of them come back. Some of them were just going to the souvenir stand to get a mug. But yeah, I'll go with the American Buffalo, but you're right, Skin of Our Teeth is possible. That's another show where some people are tempted to leave because it's—
Oh, more than tempted. I mean, I really liked it, but I watched mass exodus.
It's an unwieldy
during
play.
That production.
It never was an easy, accessible play, and I'm glad that they have tried to reinvent it.
Yeah. David, what do you have in that fifth slot?
I have Skin of Our Teeth too. I think Macbeth is in our fifth or sixth on Gold Derby, but you know, these Sam Gold Shakespeare productions, you know, King Lear did not do well with the star power it had. I think this is going to be a similar situation. So I'm going with Skin of Our Teeth. It's so rarely revived, and this is such a massive and kind of intricate and lavish production. I think even with, you know, some of the qualms about the show itself, I think it'll get in.
Yeah, if you want to go for a really out on a limb surprise nomination, I would say Lackawanna Blues was very beloved when it came out, and Ruben Santiago Hudson has had a great year. I don't have it getting in there, but I do have him. I just put him in my best actor predictions because I don't see him getting into director for Skeleton Crew, and I think it's just going to get pushed out of revival. But I think in lead actor is where they could reward him. The trouble is, Lehman Trilogy is such a powerhouse, and are all three of these guys going to get in there and dominate it? Brian, do you have all three of them?
No, actually, to be honest, although I think this is, you know, would be the perfect case where the Tonys could have created a group award or an ensemble piece, if you want to call it that. And I feel that for the whole season.
There's a few arguments
for
that
this year. Any season ever deserved an ensemble award, it is this season. And I was hoping maybe today there would be some great surprise announcement. But as wonderful as all three of them are, I kind of feel that if we do that, or if the nominating committee does that, which I'm not part of, then we rule out the rest of the entire field. And I actually think that, much like I think it was maybe out of critics, I think Simon Russell Beale will get a nomination, and I think everybody else, sadly, will not. No, out of critics did all three, but somebody else, it was just Simon. But I think we need to make room for people like Ruben Santiago Hudson, who's on my list. I think we need to make room for Sam Rockwell. I think we need to make room for David Morse.
Yeah, I think your Drama League had just Simon.
All right, it was
in
Drama League.
In
well,
their
I don't
list.
Right. And I think that, you know, I think the Tonys are going to want, the Tony nominators are going to spread the wealth. Now, interestingly, because of the eligibility today, the entire cast of Take Me Out, which I thought some people had chances, are now all in featured. So we don't have to think about them. The entire cast of The Minutes is all in featured, except for David Threlfall and Hangman. The entire cast is all out. And while I think he's very good, I don't think he's going to slip into that slot. So I know I'm actually going to go out on a limb and say Simon and Simon only.
Wow. Anyone else think that? Or I have all three of them right now. I think
I do too. I have all three.
Look, I said all three women in the Cher show would get it, and I think only one did. So this is more of a Donna Summer show kind of situation. Maybe I don't know. Look, I'm putting Simon and I'm putting Adam Godley. I feel terrible.
Yeah. I think Adam would be the fifth.
Has to be left out, but it's a tight category. Ruben Santiago Hudson, I agree, because it's a one-man show where he plays all the characters, including the woman who inspired him. Sam Rockwell, yes, and David Morse is a lock. So what this leaves out is not only David Threlfall, but Daniel Craig, Adrian Lester, as I said. Very good category.
Mm-hmm. It's very packed. Also, I would say very packed as lead actress, which is Mary Louise going to win back-to-back lead actress?
Yes.
I personally, well, I know we have some fans here. I have Deirdre O'Connell, which I know she probably won't win ultimately, but she just did, to this day, one of the coolest things I've ever seen.
She should win Drag Race. Lip sync for your life.
Can you imagine if RuPaul, she could be the next guest judge to open the All-Star season?
That would be great. Unfortunately, this is one case where the fact that the show didn't run very long and is long gone is going to hurt her chances. Mary Louise is the queen of Broadway. She's going to be the Judith Light and win again. I'm also predicting for nominations Ruth Negga, Deirdre O'Connell, LaShawns for Trouble in Mind. And I'm going on a limb and saying Gabby Beans because it's a 3-bean salad on Broadway this season with Beanie Feldstein, Shoshana Bean, and Gabby Beans. And one of them at least has to be nominated.
I have her too. She's a great find, I think, to fill in that open slot, though I know not everyone has her. David, who do you have in there?
I think I have the same 5. I'm not sold on Ruth. She got good reviews for Macbeth, but I'm not sold on if the nominators just didn't like this Macbeth at all, I could actually see her being a surprising snub. And in that case, I'm also thinking Emily Davis could get in for Is This a Room? Like that, again, early in the season, closed for a while, but the nominators see everything. And that was a really excellent performance that they could remember.
Yeah.
And I'm going to be the shocker and say, well, I'm not, both Gabby and Ruth, I think were really extraordinary. I also honestly think they both belong in featured. I have never thought this will be my soapbox that I've died on before. Lady Macbeth is not a leading part in any version of Macbeth. And I was surprised that they didn't actually put Gabby in featured, although Sabina does have a lot to do. And I think that might influence the nominators. And I think we often want our leading ladies to really like run the show. And in this case, although no offense to Emily Davis, I actually think it's going to go to Sarah Jessica Parker.
That's a very good point. She was really kind of one of the faces of Broadway's reopening. And
exactly. I think she's beloved in the community. And I think she actually also, I think people probably may have gone in with lower expectations. And if you look at, the reviews across the board, and for the record, I never talked to other nominators. I barely talked to other critics. People just went on and on about, how she really surprised them and how great her comedy was and whatever. And again, we don't always nominate comedy, but I kind of think she might slip in there.
Yeah. And speaking of featured, I really feel bad for Ebony Marshall-Oliver, who was phenomenal in Chicken and Biscuits. She was so funny. It's absolutely not a lead role. She has no business being up for lead. Yeah. She could really stand a chance at getting a nomination and featured. And it's too bad that they put her in this lead race. But speaking of featured actress, if we look over there, I have no confidence in anything. I think Kenita Miller, Kenita R. Miller will get in for Colored Girl. She gives one of the best moments of the entire season, right, frankly. And I think Uzo is pretty secure. Everything else is like a total guess. Michael, do you have any insights, any rumblings of who you think?
I agree with the 2 names you just put. And Kenita Miller, I predicted even before they started rehearsing, because she has the Trezana Beverly role. And it won a Tony for Trezana Beverly back when I was just a young child and saw the original production. I'm also putting Felicia Rashad, who's the second most unpopular person after David Mamet, because she always seems to be inadvertently defending Bill Cosby, but that's neither here nor there. She's always fantastic on stage. And she, of course, was in Skeleton Crew. I'm going to go on a limb and say Rachel Dratch for POTUS for a nomination, because I hear that she just brings the house down. She's really got those comic chops. And I'm also going on a limb and saying Johanna Ney for How I Learned to Drive, because this is finally a chance for the original cast of How I Learned to Drive to come to Broadway with this. Johanna Ney is a very respected actress who's been nominated before.
Michael, we're really linked up this year. We have the same, either we're geniuses or we're going to be very disappointed.
No, I actually look at your predictions and I copy them.
I didn't look, and I think, Michael, I think your group is really spot on, having seen everybody. I mean, whatever, right, one may think of Ms. Rashad's, or politics or whatever. It's an extraordinary performance, and she's really kind of beloved even within our community. Joanna is wonderful, and again, you're right, it's a chance to reward what we didn't get to reward 25 years ago. Rachel is beyond hilarious, although I won't be shocked if somehow or another Julie White takes that spot.
Julie White is really beloved.
I have to be honest, when I got the eligibility today, I was a little sorry, and I know this is all politics, but I mean, POTUS is really Julie's play. I mean, she really is the lead, and they should have had the balls, pardon my French, to move her up to lead, which is where she really belongs. Yeah. She might not have got nominated, but
I wouldn't be surprised if she takes out one of them because she's such a central figure, and she's gotten nominations for things like Airline Highway and Gary, which were not, sure things. They just love her. Right. So don't be surprised if she takes out one of the front runners. But Rachel Dratch, I would pay money just to see her be high again. It was hysterical. If we look at featured actor, I think I'm just as confused because I think Jesse Tyler Ferguson and Chuck Cooper will get into a monologue off for the win, perhaps. But David, who else do you think is going to fill out this category? It's really pretty up in the air with so many big ensembles.
Yeah, I mean, I think Alfie Allen is high in our odds. I think I have him in. I'm going on a limb for Brandon J. Durden from Skeleton Crew. I think Skeleton Crew is going to do well. So I have him in. And he's also in Take Me Out. So having the dual role, Take Me Out is running now. So maybe they go for him for that role. But I think, for Skeleton Crew, they'll go for him. That last slot, I'm not quite sure. I mean, for a while I had Ron Cephas Jones. And I'm just looking now at my notes to see, it could be Austin Pendleton. Like I'm thinking of putting him in. This is, again, a very crowded category, and I have not finalized my list. But I feel good about, those top 3 or 4 that I mentioned.
I agree with you on a lot of those people. I would love to personally see Austin get a nomination. I mean, I think it might, we're not, as Tony nominators and voters are not that sentimental, but the man has been doing this for 60 years. And while he's really only got 5 or 10 worthy minutes, they are brilliant. And I think that would be so cool if we could add him to this list. Mm-hmm. I kind of disagree with you with Alfie Allen, possibly maybe because I saw Johnny Flynn, but I mean, I'm sorry, I didn't think that was an impressive performance. And I actually think they know it, which is why they didn't move that into lead. Conversely, you have the entire problem of Take Me Out. Talk about an entire cast that could get nominated. Patrick J. Adams was fabulous. Michael Oberholzer was fabulous. I mean, and of course, Jesse Williams. I mean, they could take 4 of the 5 slots for all we know. I don't think that's going to necessarily happen, but I wouldn't put anything past us right now.
I have 2 of them.
It's like the Donna Summer show.
Maybe Donna Summer will pop up in the nominations just again because it's an ensemble year.
No, it is crazy that there's like 5,000 actors in Take Me Out. They're all competing against each other. It's really bizarre. But I'm going to go with 2 of them for nominations: Jesse Tyler Ferguson and Michael Oberholzer. Chuck Cooper, I think, is a lock for nomination for Trouble in Mind. He's always wonderful. He played Tevye in Fiddler on the Roof and Prince of Broadway, and he was brilliant. Austin Pendleton was also brilliant in Choir Boy, and I loved him in What's Up, Doc. And yes, we want him to get this nomination for the minutes. And I'm going with Brandon J. Durden for Skeleton Crew for the 5th nominee.
Well, we should transition over to musicals and get into something a little bit, we have maybe a little bit more certainty about, because we know A Strange Loop and Six are going to be battling it out, I think, for a win. It looks like Girl from the North Country has their nomination slot secure. The last 2, I think, could be any number of, things except for Diana. Probably any of the other ones have a shot. I'm currently going with Mr. Saturday Night and Flying Over Sunset, but I know that the industry really loves MJ a lot more than the critics did. So that could be a sneaky one. Does anyone have MJ getting in?
I do.
And why?
I think the only thing holding against that it is, again, and it's weird, theater and politics meeting so much this season. It is giving it a nomination, condoning the message, and of course the message is that they left out the bad part of Michael Jackson's life. But I mean, technically, in terms of all the elements of a musical, I think it's far and away better than either Mr. Saturday Night, which is a great Billy Crystal vehicle, but not really the world's greatest musical, and Flying Over Sunset. No, that's just a big no for me.
I loved Flying Over Sunset. Maybe I'm in the minority, but I also will point out the only time a James Lapine musical, when he's been up for this, has missed only once in his entire career. So he's just one of the people that the industry reveres. And
but it's without Sondheim this time. So,
Michael, what do you have in there? Do you have MJ as well?
I did put MJ, and you know what? Even if I didn't have to wear a mask, I would still boycott that show. But I do think it's going to get the nomination because it's running. It's a hit. Flying Over Sunset greeted people like just a truck passing in the dark. You're like, oh, what was that? Give me some acid. I don't know. I'm wrong all the time, so just ignore everything I'm saying.
You're not wrong all of the time.
David, do you have anything different?
I have the same 5 as you, Sam, but I'm tempted, if I drop anything for MJ, which I'm tempted to do, I might drop Mr. Saturday Night. I mean, at least Flying Over Sunset, with mixed result, was really trying for something. Mr. Saturday Night, I think they're going to recognize for Billy Crystal, maybe a few other categories. So I could easily see MJ taking the slot that I have that pegged for.
Yeah. Well, Musical Revival has 4 musicals contending for 3 slots. So who is going to be the unlucky one that misses out?
I think there can still be 4, but
there can with a tie, yes.
With a tie or a technicality of something.
There can be a tie actually in most of these categories if it's within a certain percentage of votes. I think it only needs to be about 3 or 4 votes, which is why we have them often. But do we think there's a...
Yeah, I assumed it was going to be Funny Girl that was dropped out, but now I'm reading raves about Julie Benko, and no kidding. I still think that Funny Girl is going to be dropped out. Of the 4, that's the one that got the weakest response, not at the box office necessarily, but just from the critical eye, saying why did we do this?
Yeah, and with Funny Girl, and I agree with you that I think it's the one that's going to drop out. It's not just the Beanie Feldstein issue where, many people felt she was miscast. There's a lot of talk about how it looks cheap, how it's a bit sloppy. And it wasn't really a well-regarded musical except for Barbara the first time. And I think there was a lot of hope that Harvey Fierstein, brilliant as he is, could really fix the second act book, but I don't even know that God could fix the second act book. Never mind Harvey. I mean, I just think you need to throw out the entire second act book and maybe start over.
I mean, it was better, but the book it's a problem in this musical. There's a reason. And I mean, I think opening it too on Barbara's birthday, there's already going to be comparison. And I think that did them a disservice because it draws even more direct comparison on your opening night, which is unfortunate because people obviously love Barbara more than God.
And what's interesting is with that category, we're not here to predict winners, but I have to say also, I'm just going to throw this out. I won't be surprised if Caroline or Change takes the actual Tony.
Really? I feel like Company is kind of unbeatable in that sense. You were just talking about closed shows.
I know people don't like closed shows, but I think there's maybe a fact. And look, it's hard to say with Tony voters, but there may be a factor of people. We were talking like How I Learned to Drive. I mean, a lot of people in the industry do feel Caroline or Change kind of got robbed the first time around.
Yeah. But I think
this is a chance to rewrite history. Nobody's ever going to argue the Company was robbed of anything. So that's my only point of why I think there's a possibility, and also, of course, it's subject matter and Tony Kushner and all that. I wouldn't rule it out. It's kind of like when Once on This Island won that year. Everybody was ruling it out. I heard all the same things I'm hearing from you now, and then it took the Tony. So I'm kind of working on that theory. Theory is the operative word.
I think Company is a slam dunk for Revival, but I think where Caroline will swoop in and take the Tony is Best Actress in a Musical, Sharon D. Clarke.
Yes.
And, when it opened, everyone said she deserves it. Will she get it? There were so many other people looming on the horizon. One by one, we saw sort of the chinks in the armor with a lot of the other performances. And I do think the other nominees will be Sutton Foster for Music Man, Joaquina Colacongo for Paradise Square, Katrina Lenk for Company, and Mare Winningham for Girl from the North Country. But I think Sharon's got it.
Yeah, I've swapped out. I have that except for Mare. I have Carmen Cusack in for Flying Over Sunset because she just has so much to do in that show, whereas Mare feels maybe you could make the argument for featured, which, speaking of, it's crazy to me also, we were talking about featured versus lead, that all of the women for Six are here, because I don't know about you, but one solo in a musical does not a lead part make to me. And it's unfair, because it's crazy that Six will probably be the biggest long-running financial hit of the season, it looks like, and it's weird for them not to maybe get any acting nominations. Does anyone have any of the Six women?
No, because I don't know that, and I've seen that, I'm seeing the show again for the third time tomorrow, but with some new cast members. But I agree with you totally, Sam. Like, I don't see how one solo gets you to be a featured person, especially against these women. And I basically have Michael's list, who have so much to do and are really the emotional heart. And I understand what you're saying about Mare. I think that's one of the most extraordinary performances I've seen, and I've seen it 3 different times. But I do agree with you, Sam, that I could have seen it in featured, but I think once they put her in lead, the nominators are going to recognize that. I think the issue is going to come down to Katrina versus Carmen.
I do think that it's, briefly, let me just say, Adriana Hicks from Six, I think will have a good chance for nomination next year, because she's
as the lead of Some Like It Hot.
Sure.
I'll get yelled at by all 3 panelists now, because I, for the moment, am thinking that Sutton is not getting in. I have Mare and I have Carmen Cusack. You know, I said in the last time Sam and I talked, before Funny Girl even started previews, I said, I don't think Music Man is getting in. The response was lukewarm. I don't think it's going to do great in every category. And, you know, big shocking snubs have happened in this category before. Audra doesn't get in every time she, you know, has something here. So I wouldn't be surprised if Sutton is left off, to be honest.
Yeah, I do think that Music Man, again, when we were talking about Sarah Jessica being sort of the face of Broadway coming back, this was definitely one of those productions. And I have seen a lot of industry folks who like it better than the critical reaction would have brought you to believe. And those are the people who are voting. So I don't think it's going to get snubbed. I do think Sutton's in, but I see your point, David.
Yeah, no, I'm not yelling at you, David. I'm with Sam. I mean, I see your point. I think Sutton also is sort of this really beloved Broadway star, who in a way almost triumphs over her miscasting. I think, I think there's a way of looking at that going, she really doesn't make sense as Marion, age-wise, voice-wise, any way you want to do it. And still you kind of like really end up rooting for her when you watch the show. And I think that may go a long way to keeping her in the category.
There are always going to be snubs, but it's impossible to predict the snubs. That's why they're snubs.
That's why they're snubs.
So there's going to be something we're not even thinking could be snubbed, and they're not going to get nominated. It's not even a snub. They just didn't get the nomination. That's how I would explain it to them if I were their agent.
Well, let's quickly get into the featured races here.
We didn't do Best Actor in a musical, did we?
Oh, we didn't? Well, isn't that decided?
Yes. But just for the record, decide it for us, Sam.
For the record, it looks like there's pretty much 5 men who are out here on top. I think Jaquel Spivey is out front with probably Miles Frost for the win. Perhaps Billy Crystal could pull out a win too, but I think the other 2 men are slightly above him. And then Hugh Jackman and Rob McClure, who is always the Susan Lucci of this. Rob McClure just needs a really great musical so he can finally win. But I think those are the 5. Ramin maybe could have done it for Funny Girl, but he has been out with COVID too. So there are, I think, going to be at least a couple nominators who won't have seen him, unfortunately, which is rather unfortunate.
Okay.
I don't think
Go on to featured.
Okay. Well, featured, it looks like Company, at least in terms of the odds. And what I'm predicting is that it's going to take both featured races with Patty and Matt Doyle. Does anyone think anyone can challenge them? What else is filling out these categories?
I think we can fill the categories, and I certainly do have people filling them, but I will totally agree with you that it is their races to lose. I don't think anybody, believe it or not, with this wide range of 13 musicals this season and so much talent, I don't think anybody has made the same kind of impression on viewers, nominators, voters as those two individuals.
Yeah, I think the only kind of option that would result in different win is if Strange Loop really becomes an overwhelming thing that pulls in other wins, like kind of how Band's Visit did for Ariel Satchel. John Andrew Morrison is great. The thoughts are great in A Strange Loop. They're not as, overpowering roles as some of these other people like Matt Doyle in Company.
Again, that would have been a wonderful ensemble to include. I think the nominators, as smart as they are, as smart as we are as critics, may have trouble distinguishing which thought is better than which other thought. I mean, L. Morgan Lee will stand out because she is different than the rest, but
and she will become, I think she really will. She's lower in our odds, but I think the users are wrong. I think she will get in and become the first trans person to be nominated in an acting category, which is an incredible moment to have. And I think that will be filled out with Jane Lynch, Jennifer Simard. And I feel like the last slot is between Jeanette Bayardell, who has a great moment at the end of North Country, and Shoshana Bean, who I wasn't expecting, but just got in the Outer Critics and Drama League. So she could sneak in there and finally get her first ever nomination.
Yeah, I have Shoshana on my list too. She was the brightest spot other than Mr. Crystal in Mr. Saturday Night. Those pipes are amazing. And, she's really paid her dues. I mean, she's been around our community for a long time. And I think, again, not that we're that sentimental, but I think, we might throw her that nomination, and it would be well deserved.
In featured actor, we've talked about Funny Girl getting shut out of the top category, but I have Jared Grimes getting in to featured actor thanks to his tap dancing. David, do you have him in there?
I don't, but I could, and I might between now and Monday. No, even people who didn't love the production loved his work in it. So it's the kind of nomination that you could absolutely see, even though, I don't think Funny Girl will do well across the board. That's one of the nominations it could get. So I agree with you, Sam.
Yeah.
And I think the most shocking thing, and this goes back to what you said, David, about this whole featured category in our discussion. I mean, they really went out of their way to hire 4 separate Tony winners to play featured roles in The Music Man. And that was part of their whole gimmick. And no offense to Jefferson Mays, Jane Hattieshell, Marie Mullen, Shuler Hensley, they're not part of this discussion.
You don't think Jefferson Mays will get in?
Not necessarily. I mean, I won't be shocked if he does, but I don't think any of them were used well enough or did anything special enough to necessarily make it. And I think there are other people who could surprisingly slip into those slots.
Well, Michael, any last words on this category before we have to wrap up for today?
I actually have Jefferson Mays for nomination and Jane Hattieshell, and I think I know better than all of you because, like I said, I didn't see most of the shows, so I'm totally aligned with the thinking of the voters.
Well,
I used to do better as a kid, like watching the Tonys on TV and predicting. I hadn't seen anything. We didn't go to theater when I was a kid, and I actually did really well just based on the buzz. So I might stick to never going to see a show again.
Well,
Michael, I mean, and you are great at this and stop being so deprecating, but I think there's a difference between what the voters might do and what we're talking about, which is the nominators might do.
Yeah.
And I've always felt that the nominators have a really, they take this very seriously. God bless all of them. They're not like you and I. They don't do this for a living, I mean, they're at theater for a living, but they don't have to see shows like this and write it. And I think they take it very seriously. And I think what we've seen in past Tony years is that with their eye, quality really tends to win out over things that sometimes do in voting, where it's more about stars and buzz and name. And so I think you might see, you were saying like we can't predict the snubs. I think you might see things from the nominators that you weren't necessarily expecting.
I hope so, because I thought Jeanette Bayardell was fantastic.
Fabulous. Love her, love her, love her.
I'd love to see her get a slot. I'm predicting John Andrew Morrison for nomination from Strange Loop and Elle Morgan Lee as featured actress from Strange Loop. Because like we said, when a show is a powerhouse like a Strange Loop, it's going to pop up in a lot of different categories. And by the way, I think it's a lot to win. Did we talk about that?
Yes, we did.
Because, but let me just add that even though last year Moulin Rouge won, and that was sort of a big lavish Broadway show with old songs, that was half a season. Generally, the best musical is sort of an off-Broadway transfer with original material, whether it be a Hamilton, Hadestown, Band's Visit, Fun Home, Dear Evan Hansen, and Strange Loop fits the bill there.
Well, whether you've seen all the shows or just a few of them, make sure you go hit up Gold Derby, put in your predictions, and see if you can score better than any of the four of us. So, gentlemen, thank you so much.
Somebody will, no doubt about it.